Pamela Voorhees was born around 1930 and wedded Elias Voorhees, a miner from Cadiz, Ohio, when she was a teenager. They resided in a mobile home near Camp Crystal Lake, where he subjected her to physical and verbal abuse. In 1946, at the age of 16, Pamela was expecting a son. It is not clear what happened to Elias after her pregnancy, but it is assumed that he was killed by Pamela with an axe after he beat her, as portrayed in the comic book Friday the 13th, Pamela's Tale, and mentioned in the 2017 video game. In 1980, Pamela Voorhees was the one who carried out the murders at Camp Crystal Lake in Friday the 13th. Her son, Jason, who suffered from hydrocephalus, drowned in the lake at Camp Crystal while being bullied by other campers in 1957. The counselors were not attentive and were more interested in other things. Voorhees sought revenge on any counselor she believed was responsible for her son's death.
Did you know that a young boy drowned the year before those two others were killed? The counselors weren't paying any attention. They were making love while that young boy drowned. His name was Jason.
In 1958, 1 year after Jason's drowning, two counselors named Barry and Claudette attempted, in a barn, but Pamela caught them and killed them both with a machete. Barry was stabbed in the stomach, while Claudette had the machete slammed into her throat, although her death occurred off-screen. Pamela went undetected for the murders, and as a result, the camp was quickly closed down, earning it the moniker Camp Blood among the nearby residents. When attempts were made to reopen the camp in subsequent years, Pamela took matters into her own hands by contaminating the water source and setting fire to the cabins to ensure that the camp would not reopen. In 1979, Steve Christie decided to reopen the camp and enlisted the help of his friend Alice Hardy, along with her friends Ned, Jack, Brenda, Marcy, and Bill. Pamela, upon learning of the camp's reopening, returned to prevent it from happening again. On her way to the camp, Pamela tricked and killed one of the counselors, Annie, who had hitchhiked with her. Once at the camp, Pamela spied on the counselors and began her killing spree during a storm. She started by murdering Ned off-screen, then killed Jack and Marcy after they had sex. Pamela hid under the bed and shot an arrow into Jack's neck, while she slammed a felling axe into Marcy's face in the bathroom. Pamela lured Brenda outside her cabin during the storm by mimicking a child's voice, and then killed her off-screen as well. Later, Steve Christie returns to the camp only to be stabbed in the stomach by Pamela.
Oh hi, what are you doing on this mess?
Alice and Bill notice that everyone has disappeared and begin to investigate. However, Pamela severs the phone lines and disables Ned's truck to prevent them from escaping. She then turns off the generator, which leads to Bill's death as she slices his throat and pins his body with arrows on the generator room's door. Alice discovers Bill's body and begins to barricade the cabin just before Pamela throws Brenda's body into the window. Pamela then drives up to the cabin and greets Alice in a friendly manner, pretending to be Steve. Pamela comes inside and tells Alice the story of Jason's drowning while she sobs over Brenda's body. Unveiling her true identity as the murderer, Pamela assaults Alice with her Bowie knife. However, Alice manages to defend herself by using a fireplace poker to injure Pamela, and then runs away. As she navigates through the camp, Alice stumbles upon the corpses of Annie and Steve. In a desperate attempt to save herself, she hides inside the food storage closet. Despite her efforts, Pamela discovers her and attacks her with a machete. Fortunately, Alice is able to knock her out with a frying pan, mistakenly believing that she had killed her. Later, Alice heads to the lake to calm down, but Pamela regains consciousness and assaults her again with the machete. The two fight fiercely, but Alice ultimately gains the upper hand and beheads Pamela Voorhees with her own weapon, putting an end to her reign of terror and avenging the deaths of all her victims. As Pamela's head is severed from her body, her hands twitch and flail in an unrealistic manner before she finally succumbs to her injuries. After the violent encounter, Alice is left traumatized and seeks refuge in a canoe, unaware that she is being watched by Jason Voorhees, the son of the now-deceased Pamela. Jason, who had supposedly drowned as a child and survived alone in the woods, seeks revenge against those responsible for his mother's death. He collects her severed head, clothes, and weapons and creates a makeshift shrine in a shack in the forest. In the sequel, Friday the 13th Part 2, Jason continues his mother's killing spree by hunting down Alice and exacting revenge by killing her with an ice pick to the temple and placing Pamela's head in a fridge as a tribute to his mother. While an officer chases down Jason to his shack, he sees his mother's head and belongings on the altar, although unseen to the audience, inside the shack before Jason slams a hammer into the officer's head. During the sequel's climax, the last survivor of a nearby training camp in the Crystal Lake, Ginny, flees from Jason into his shack in the woods, where she sees the altar. Using her child psychology skills, she places Pamela's sweater onto herself and temporarily convinces Jason that she is his mother. This fails, however, when Jason sees his mother's head behind Ginny and attacks her. In the end, Jason gets his mother's machete slammed down to his shoulder by Ginny while struggling to kill another revived counselor named Paul, and she soon discards his mother's sweater outside the shack. In the end of Friday the 13th Part 3, the last survivor named Chris Higgins has a dream hallucination where Pamela Voorhees, with her head attached for some reason, grabs her and pulls her under the water. While a group of residents go to Crystal Lake in Friday the 13th, the final chapter, they see Mrs. Voorhees' tombstone before passing. In Freddy vs. Jason, Freddy Krueger appears as Pamela Voorhees in order to convince Jason to help him murder the residents of Elm Street. If you liked this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.